Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar. I'm David Shaw, the Publishing Director for Family Business Magazine and FO Pro, the Family Office Professional. I hope that all of you are doing really well and enjoying the fall weather. Family offices and family businesses face a unique balancing act in the year ahead. Rising operational costs are putting pressure on budgets, while at the same time, cybersecurity risks are growing more complex and harder to manage. According to Omega Systems' latest survey, family offices show the lowest confidence among financial firms in their employees' ability to spot AI-powered attacks, with ransomware and deepfake impersonation ranking among their greatest fears. Today, we're going to discuss how frequently family offices and family businesses are being targeted by cyber threats, what operational priorities are being prioritized with cybersecurity and over cybersecurity, and how confident family offices and family businesses are in their employees as a security defense against cyber attack. This session is going to offer a lot of takeaways. Before we get started, a few housekeeping items for everyone. We welcome questions. You can ask them at any time during the webinar. You see the blue bar below the slide that says ask a question. We'll get to as many of them as we can today. We'll go for no more than 60 minutes. And this presentation afterwards will indeed be emailed to you. So joining me today for this discussion are Omega Systems' Warren Finkel, Managing Director, and Steve Hathaway, Director of Customer Success. First, a little bit about Omega Systems. It's an MSSP, which is a managed security services provider with 20 plus years of experience in IT, cybersecurity, and compliance, has more than 800 customers across the U.S., and deep expertise in supporting financial services firms, including family offices. So as Managing Director of Omega Systems Northeast region, Warren Finkel leverages decades of experience and deep-rooted relationships within the financial services sector. Prior to Omega's acquisition of Ace IT Solutions in 2022, where he founded a company he founded and served as leader for 14 years, Warren cultivated a reputation for delivering exceptional custom IT solutions to family offices, private equity firms, hedge funds, RIAs, and alternative asset firms. As Director of Customer Success at Omega Systems, Steve Hathaway leads the teams responsible for driving long-term customer satisfaction and technical excellence, including customer success and solutions architecture. He has more than 15 years of experience in IT and managed services. So with that, I'd like to welcome both of you here. Welcome, Warren and Steve. Take that down and just say, let's dive into this survey that you conducted. First, can you tell me a little bit more about the survey itself, and give a sense of what you were setting out to learn from this survey?
So thanks, David. Our primary goal was to get a clear current picture of the IT cybersecurity and compliance landscape and challenges that are shaping the financial services industry today. The threat landscape is changing so rapidly, especially with the new AI-driven threats, that it's felt like the perfect time to take this pulse. In addition, other service providers and banks continually publish yearly family office reports with regard to operational excellence, investing, risk, and cybersecurity. We felt that we owed it to our clients and the industry as a market and thought leader to put together our own survey and report. Some of the items we see every day are as follows. Phishing is the number one issue, and the use of AI to improve these and deepfakes is expanding rapidly. For family offices specifically, social engineering is a much higher risk than in other companies. Tying into phishing, business email compromise is also common because of credential harvesting. People are just lazy and use the same credentials across platforms. Most do not have a cybersecurity response plan in place, and besides lack of MFA, which is multi-factor authentication, there is typically no cyber training, risk assessments, and any kind of EDR and advanced threat protection. In addition, we really wanted to understand how firms are safeguarding investor trust, identify where critical weaknesses are, like outdated infrastructure and limited threat monitoring. might be leaving them exposed, and see how their IT models are impacting their cyber resilience. Ultimately, this research helps us better serve our customers by deeply understanding their evolving needs.
Excellent. So should we dive into some of the results here? I think the first one is pretty interesting. The survey found that 93% of the firms that you surveyed experienced at least one cyber incident in this prior year. And for family offices, 1 in 4 say they've detected. So 25% have detected more than 25 cyber threats in the past 12 months, which would be phishing, malware, ransomware, unauthorized access. Steve, what does this tell us about the base of today's threat landscape for financial firms as a whole, but also for family offices?
Yeah. Well, I think what it tells us really is that everyone's a target, right? Especially financial firms where there's a lot of dollars at play. You always want to have a plan for the when, not just the if, right? It's planning about when something's going to happen, not if it's going to happen. And it's just as important to have a plan for recovery as it is for prevention. What was a little alarming about the survey data is there seems to be a disconnect between exposure and priority, especially for family offices. For example, 44% of the general audience listed cybersecurity threats as their most concerning priority this year, followed by the rising operational costs you mentioned at 41%. But for family offices, they were reversed, right? 53% on rising operational costs ahead of cyber threats at just 39%. And I think what this does is it gives us a peek into the mindset that maybe some firms are still thinking they're a little bit too small to be a target. Either that, or they just don't yet have the insights into some of the threats that are already present in their environments. So again, it just makes it very important to have a preventative strategy, but also a recovery strategy.
Okay. Yeah, this is an interesting disconnect here that's brought out in the survey. I did have a quick question on some of the survey methodology. So let me back up a bit here just for everybody to see that it was 300 plus financial services executives, basically mid-sized U.S. firms with 11 to 250 employees and between 10 million and 10 billion in assets under management. So I hope that that questioner, I hope that helps you understand the scope here. So from this, Warren, what do you think of, why do you think cyber risk takes a back seat to operational costs for many family offices?
So operational costs, most of our family offices don't look at, based upon this disconnect, they don't really look at the operational costs as a problem. I mean, cyber risk is definitely the bigger problem we see from other firms, but it's more or less a fascinating and concerning disconnect. Based on what we see, it's the perception of the immediate cost versus abstract risk. So for many family offices, rising operational costs are tangible, immediate, and hit the budget every single month. Cybersecurity, on the other hand, can feel more like an insurance policy than an operational necessity. The irony is that these two priorities are directly linked. Our report shows 67% of family offices admit that their reliance on outdated on-premise systems would challenge their recovery from a breach, a figure significantly higher than the 50% average for all firms. These legacy systems are often inefficient and expensive to maintain, which drives up those very same operational costs. So furthermore, 50% of family offices are still managing IT and security entirely in-house. They are likely viewing the solution to cyber risk modernization and expert help and major new operational expense rather than seeing the cyber risk itself as a primary business threat and initiative.
Okay. So, and let's look at all financial services firms. Why the flip there, even though they're pretty close? Is it just a higher priority for cybersecurity threats with non-family office firms?
I think, as Steve said before, the family offices are not taking this as serious as other financial firms.
Okay.
So that's why we believe there's a disconnect. And based upon the survey, it is alarming. And our family office clients, we're trying to educate them on these risks as being as important as any operational risk.
Got it. Okay. So I guess that where it really comes down to is what the impact of a cyber attack. Family offices, according to your survey, believe that 78% believe a successful cyber attack would trigger, their client/family withdrawals, their family/investor panic, and a loss of assets under management. Steve, if you were advising a family office today, what's the first conversation you'd have about linking cyber resilience with investor confidence?
Yeah. Well, David, you touched on it earlier where you mentioned that I think it was 79% of on the low confidence rate, right, for their employees to be able actually to identify threats. I think family offices showed, was it 60% confidence level in the employee's ability to spot the AI powered phishing threats? I think really what that tells us is when you pair that with only 17% of the firms are actually going to prioritize security awareness training in 2026, it's going to result in a lot of employees that are ill prepared for what's going to hit their inbox, right? These sophisticated phishing attempts. By conducting ongoing cyber awareness training, you're better preparing your staff for the when that I mentioned earlier, right? So when it happens, you're giving them regular repetition to spot the threats, a standard operating procedure for how to report them so that they're getting analyzed. And it's just going to increase the likelihood that they'll be able to identify them in a real world scenario.
Okay. How would that action communicate? What are the best ways to communicate that back to the family office investors themselves, the actions that you're taking or recommending that the family office take?
Well, I think when you look at this number here, right, 78% believe that family offices, would be loss of business, right, loss of dollars. I think that's the easiest thing to relate to. It is, the easiest, the most susceptible part of your business are your people.
Right.
And so if you're not investing in them and taking that seriously to train them, have them understand what things are being seen in real time, you're putting them at a disadvantage. You're putting the company at a disadvantage.
Right. And okay. So I'll come back to that idea in a second, but let's talk a little bit about the role that employees play in this whole threat environment. So we all know that employees are usually a firm's weakest link when it comes to cyber threat prevention. And two interesting stats that I noted. Family offices show the lowest confidence in their employees' ability to spot a cyber threat. Or like an AI-powered phishing threat. And then surprisingly, only 17% of firms said they plan to prioritize security awareness training in 26. So Warren, what do these numbers tell you, and what practical steps can teams take to strengthen human detection, human defenses, and so on without breaking budgets?
So David, these numbers are certainly alarming for us. They tell me that family offices know they have a people problem. So what we discuss, and again, like Steve was saying, we really discuss employee security awareness training with our clients. And to strengthen these human defenses without a huge budget, it is about consistency, not cost. Instead of a big expense or an annual training day, firms can use low-cost automated phishing simulation platforms. They can integrate short 5-minute training videos into weekly routines and include that training as part of the new employee onboard process as well. So we put a big and huge emphasis on security awareness training. Like I said earlier, it's got to be consistent. It can't be once a year. And the value that we put forth with our partners or our clients is that we instruct, we strongly consider, we work with them, whether it's phishing, whether it's security awareness training. These are imperative and table stakes for any family office.
Just as a note to support that, our own firm, MLR Media, employs that kind of service as a training and it helps us all understand what a phishing email might look like, and it's really good training. All you have to do is press one of those once and realize what mistake you made, right? So.
I want to add something that, years ago it was like, hey, let's have the C-suite of the family office not do it because they know what's going on. Right. It's got to be all everybody included. You can't say the philosophy of all or nothing. It's everyone has to take it. Everyone's got to play a part and taking this initiative. It's for protection of the firm.
Indeed. Okay. Well, so what would you recommend in terms of that 17% who plan to prioritize security awareness training? I mean, how do they, how do they, how do we get a higher priority number there, a higher percentage prioritizing it? Is anything you can suggest?
Well, I think one way is these types of webinars are definitely helpful. Obviously, October is Cybersecurity Month, and a lot of our clients are doing phishing exercises. They're asking us to implement phishing exercises. So, awareness, obviously, you don't want to say, let you get hit once and then you'll be ready for the next training, but certainly proactive assurances. And I think continuous training, we've got a program in-house where we've got an account management team, a client success manager per client. And some of these activities are discussed during weekly or monthly cadence meetings. So Steve, one of his roles is to manage that group. And that's usually a big part of those meetings.
Okay. We just had a comment from an audience member who said, my last employer coupled detecting phishing training with bragging rights. Employees who were live tested with a phishing message, if they didn't click on it in 3 tests, they got a literal trophy so that someone would give in a not PH phishing, but an FISH phishing contest, and they were displayed with pride on employees' desks and bookcases. So that's interesting.
Well, look, I just want to mention one thing, and I don't want to belabor the point, but if anybody looked at the news this morning, the Land Rover out of London was hit with a cyber attack. 6 months of no production on cars, which meant employees are not getting paid. So everyone's getting, and they didn't mention, I looked all over the internet the last few days the last few months about what exactly happened. They won't say, or at least I couldn't find it. I got to believe it was a phishing exploit, possibly. But again, if you're one piece of that puzzle and you don't play your part, look at 6 months of employees not getting paid. Yeah. So look at the devastating effects of a car dealership out of London with 3 manufacturing facilities all shut down because of a cyber attack.
Right. Interesting. Okay, so we've talked about employees as an area of weakness, but one area for family offices is also some of the reliance on legacy infrastructure. So we're talking spreadsheets, different kinds of, cloud systems and so on. With this survey, 67% of family offices say they'd struggle to recover from a cyber incident because of the reliance on on-premise infrastructure, compared to 50% of an average for other financial services firms. So in that kind of environment, Steve, can you talk a little bit about why family offices are slow to modernize? What are the barriers you typically see? Is it budget or lack of control, trust in the cloud, fear of giving up control outside?
To couple with that result, right, I think another thing that stood out was the amount of financial firms and family offices that they're not really outsourcing anything. They're still reliant on either some internal IT staff or maybe a smaller MSSP. I think price certainly plays a factor, but when you have access to a smaller IT staff, where you kind of fall into a comfort zone, right? They know you very well. They provide very high-end support. But the downside to that is that they also often don't have the tool set or the experience for more of the security features and get into that type of depth. So they'll allow sometimes the firms to stay on legacy equipment, older operating systems, older firmwares, because it's something they know. They've installed it. They're used to it. It's working, right? So why change it? Downside to that, right, is they're not really understanding the security implications that can have. So a lot of times as an MSSP, when we come in and perform audits, we'll routinely see these misconfigurations, older hardware, signs of poor hygiene. A lot of common times you'll see a lot of users or accounts or devices that are still active and haven't logged into a system for over 90 days. So when you're seeing a lot of this stuff, I think really what it comes down to is right now there's just the not knowing until you bring in a company to give you a different perspective and then kind of open it up and say, yeah, everything looks really good from a support perspective, but you have all these kind of lingering issues and these imperfections that really could be exploited by someone.
Okay. So I think you might have mentioned DDoS attacks. There's a base question on what those are, the denial of service attack. Can you?
Yeah. So those are used commonly to essentially take down network infrastructure, to take down large providers. It's essentially a lot of computers being used to flood traffic to a specific IP address, a specific device. And if you do enough of it, you can essentially render that device out of commission, bring it down completely, take a network down or take a service down.
Okay. So, and which is a different kind of result than what affected Amazon Web Services the other day, which was, I think, an upload of code that caused some kind of problem. So
yeah, they're still, a little bit. I think they've been throwing out a little bit that is possible related to a little bit of DNS, some infrastructure. So they're kind of a little spread out as far as what their root cause analysis is. They did come out pretty quickly to say that it was not a cyber event.
Okay, great. All right, so let's move on a little deeper into the survey. And this is, you've talked about managed security service providers, of which you're one, but you also asked them how they're doing their cybersecurity services. So the results show basically that most financial firms and family offices are slow to outsource their security. And, it looks like 50% are still doing dedicated internal or internal shared resources with 19%. And then 31% are either co-managed or fully outsourced to a managed services provider. Warren, you coach a lot of family offices about the benefits of partnering with firms like yours. What do you say to a family office that's slow to, first of all, why would they be slow or hesitant to work with an MSSP? And what do you say to them about that?
David, great question. So the hesitation usually comes down to two things: fear of losing control and a misunderstanding of the cost versus value. The reality is that 50% of all family offices are still trying to do this in-house, as the survey says, and they are the least likely to embrace a fully outsourced model, with only 8% doing so. So another alarming number of 8%. What I tell them is to think about it in terms of capability and scale. Your internal team, no matter how good they are, cannot be experts in everything, and they cannot work 24/7. But that's exactly what family offices say they value most in a partner. 61% want 24/7 threat response or SOC services, and 56% want 24/7 help desk access. Those are the things that we provide services for on a daily basis. We stress this to our clients, and we obviously stress this to any referral partners that provide us opportunities into the family office market. I think partnering with guys like us, or an MSP or an MSSP that's qualified, gives clients or gives companies the immediate access to a deep bench of specialists. Our survey data proves this works. MSSP-supported firms are more confident in spotting advanced threats and contain breaches significantly faster than firms with only internal teams. It's not about giving up control. It's about gaining a strategic partner that hardens your defenses and lets your team focus on serving your clients, which is actually their family. So in retrospect, losing control is minimal compared to the benefits.
Okay. And when there's that fear of losing control, is that losing control over their financial data or just losing control over the defenses?
I think, look, years ago, family offices were afraid to lose control, but they also didn't want to lose the physical environment. The fear of, hey, I don't see my data, I don't see my servers, I want that server, I want that data. There's been adoption to the cloud, which we see quite often, and people are accepting that 365 is actually cloud-based. So everyone understands that. The next phase is moving data into the cloud, and all these tech stack, whether it's any applications run these family offices, are usually cloud-based. So it's just an education and talking to these people and making sure they understand that the cloud is as safe as it is. And we're putting controls on users, systems, and mobile devices, so it properly protects them from any kind of breach or security issue.
Okay. Excellent. And Steve, what are some smart ways that family offices can use to stretch their budgets while still improving cyber resilience? How can we flip that cost, operations cost investment in cybersecurity equation there?
Yeah, well, I think, as far as getting return on the investment, we talked about cyber awareness training. So I would bring that up again. Another one would be standard form of multi-factor authentication enforcement, all critical systems, right? Warren brought it up earlier. That's specifically calling out email, remote access, and your mainline and business applications. Email and remote access by far still two of the most the highest rate of cyber events that we see when we've done kind of any forensic or root cause analysis. They originate from remote access and email compromisations. So kind of maximizing those tools. They're low cost for the most part. They're easy to set up and easy to maintain and provide huge value for the staff and for the company. The other thing I would say is, maximize the tools that you have today. I can't tell you enough how many times we onboard customers that have already invested into a solution and they're not maximizing the feature set that it gets for it, especially from a security perspective, right? You buy it for one thing, not knowing it can do all these other things. A great example would be Microsoft licensing. We're always onboarding customer tenants where they're utilizing email, some file capabilities, maybe Microsoft Teams, but they're not taking advantage of the advanced logging, conditional access policies, the data loss prevention, that all are bundled into the Microsoft SKUs. So maximize, you're already investing in some of your tools. How can you maximize those to better protect your users and your devices?
Excellent point. So let's look ahead to 2026, which is coming up surprisingly quickly. You asked survey respondents what their IT and security focuses will be. Where are they going to focus their budgets? And it looked like the top three were threat detection, advanced threat detection, network and perimeter security, and cloud adoption, migration, and security. Can you kind of dig a little bit deeper into those three priorities and let me know if you agree with these priorities and is there anything that's missing? Warren, you want to take first stab at that?
Yeah, no problem. Yeah. So I absolutely agree with these top three priorities. They are deeply connected. So cloud adoption is critical, and especially since, as we discussed, a lot of family offices are worried about current legacy systems. It would seriously handicap if in fact there was any kind of disaster recovery effort. So as Steve was mentioning, sometimes these older systems are not patched properly. They don't have access to certain applications that are on these servers. That's where we see a big problem when it comes to disaster recovery. I think when we provide migration services, we're migrating to the cloud and it's done securely. So the threat protection and threat detection is only a foundational pillar of any modern defense. There's got to be a complete strategy behind any kind of adoption. I think based upon our data, David, I think there's two glaring admissions for us. I think it's the human element. We discussed the lowest confidence in the employees of the ability to spot phishing. So we're focusing on 2026 as a priority for employee awareness training. And second issue that we see as a glaring omission is any kind of incident response planning. Obviously, if there is a breach, people need to know what to do next. It's like a tested playbook. So incident response will outline exactly what needs to happen if in fact there's a breach, what data to preserve, how to communicate and protect your investors. An IR plan is basically an IR plan links the technology defenses to the business continuity and survival of the business. So all these factors above are part of our consulting approach, and obviously it's a huge priority for us next year to make sure these things continue to happen. Okay.
Steve, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'll just add that, I think further down the list, you see backup and DR, disaster recovery, at 25%. Where that stood out to me was, I think it was 78% of firms worried about their ability to recover in the event of a threat and something actually coming through successfully. Those don't add up to me, right? Like that's it. You should be confident in your ability to recover, and backup and disaster recovery, business continuity, testing of those plans, like Warren mentioned, would be a huge budget item for me in 2026, especially if that's a worry for you today. Analyze your critical systems. What are we doing to safeguard them? What are we doing to back them up? And then have we tested the recovery of those systems and how quickly we can get back online?
Okay. And could you, for those of us who are more novice in cybersecurity, what is attack surface management? Is that that distributed sort of remote and central devices, or?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. So the thing about some of these systems, they're kind of open-ended, right? So network perimeters, attack surface management, same exact thing. It's kind of like, how can you mitigate the surface in which people, the avenues in which someone can exploit one of your systems? And so that's why we talk about, we mentioned the MFA, and we partner with a product called Duo, for an example.
Okay.
Well, Duo isn't just a multi-factor authentication platform; it's also an SSO platform. And so, when I mentioned email, remote access, your line of business applications, essentially what you're doing with the product like Duo is you're providing your employees with a single authentication method, username and password, but also a single form of multi-factor authentication. And you're able to build in policies that can geofence things so that we're only able to log in from certain approved locations, but also look for anomalies where someone authenticated to Salesforce from New York City, and then 20 minutes later, they authenticated to their email server from California, right? Systems can pull these things and say that's an impossible travel anomaly, and they can mitigate it, hopefully as close to real time.
Excellent. Okay. So as long as we're talking budgets here, this question came in early, and I think it's a really good one. So what should a family office expect to spend on its cybersecurity defenses to be safe? Is it as a percent of assets under management, or what are some of the broader parameters that you might recommend or have them expect?
Yeah, it's a tough question for a budget. I think it's to us, it's table stakes, obviously, but it's hard to pinpoint what that budget should be because every firm has different approach, different type of employees, different size of the business. Mm-hmm. We have a per month per user cost for all encompassing services. So we offer bespoke services as well, but again, it's hard to pinpoint. But I would say, not trying to put a number on it, but people need to be able to say comfortably, whether it's between $300 to $500 per seat per month, that would include any of the IT and cybersecurity services, and they would be fully covered. And as Steve was said before, it would be covered with all the, the Office 365 security framework, Duo, and other security features.
So you would disconnect it from a percentage of assets under management, because the more assets you have, it's not going to necessarily change the price.
We don't look at assets under management and say, okay, let's just give you a price. We have a standard price, and we're consistently, we've got we have a great roster of family office clients, and consistently across the board, our reputation is more important than figuring out what we can charge and what we can't charge. It's a consistent price. We're 24/7 support. We've got technical services ready and available all day and all night, whether it's Saturday or Sunday. So for that one set per month price, we're giving them, concierge white glove services, and that includes all the cyber protection.
Okay. So I hope that answers that question to the questioner. Let's get to some key takeaways before we get to some other audience questions here. So you want to walk through these for our audience?
Yep, we can. Sure. So again, going back to number one, cyber risk outweighs operational costs savings. We always tell our clients never try to save any money on cybersecurity. It's a fractional price compared to what the risks are. Who knows what value a family office puts on? They themselves know what value it is. If a patriarch or a matriarch is looking to do something and you can't operate your business or do a wire transfer, that could be astronomical costs. So the investment in a strategic partner like us, or another qualified firm, or certainly having the best-in-class services, which we do offer, should be a high consideration. Number two, we continue to say employee training. We can't say that enough. Obviously, we use products like KnowBe4. These are best-in-class services, and they've been around for a long time, and they continually update these phishing exercises and security awareness training modules. So we're fully committed to that product. And, again, as table stakes, every client of Omega must have cybersecurity training, cybersecurity phishing exercises, and obviously we can get to a little later, cybersecurity insurance. As far as number 3, again, best methodology is work with a strategic partner like us. Obviously, there are a lot of other qualified people out there, but we believe we do it right. And certainly, again, like Steve was mentioning earlier, it's the expertise of these people who've been sitting on the IT department for a family office for 15 years. They know what that office requires, but they don't know what's coming out. They have no roadmap of all the different products and services that continually evolve.
Okay. Those are interesting, very good priorities. And I would also note, I don't want this to become an ad for KnowBe4, but that's the service we use as well. So they're very sneaky and really good trainers. And the sneakiness is part of, the idea is to try and train us into not falling for phishing emails. So they do a pretty darn good job of that. So, okay. So what I'd like to do is ask some audience questions here and also encourage more questions if we could. You'd mentioned cyber liability insurance, and I noted from your survey, which, by the way, you're going to be able to get that full survey report, everyone who's in the audience here. There's really interesting data that we didn't go through today. But it says that 10% of firms that you surveyed don't carry cyber liability insurance. How can that be? What is causing 1 in 10 financial services firms not to insure themselves?
Well, a good point is that 9 out of 10 do, but how do you get that to 100%? So the key is they have to understand that it's not if, it's when. Used to be if, and that was a big focus on if. Maybe I don't need that cybersecurity insurance. Maybe I don't need that MFA. Maybe I don't need any other protection. But unfortunately, bigger companies than a lot of these family offices, and not to minimize the value of a family office, a lot of these massive companies across the world are getting hit with cyber attacks. So, the key to insurance is to defray any of these costs and operational costs. And those firms, the 10% of the firms, they're bearing 100% of any kind of catastrophic financial and legal and operational costs of a cyber attack. So I can certainly walk through some of the things that cyber insurance covers. Ransomware, if you have a good policy, and certainly offline, we can give you some of the best in class companies to do cyber insurance. We maintain a list of about 30 or 40, but there's top 10, and they understand the cyber market as well. But things that they do cover are ransomware payments. Obviously, anytime there's a breach, is a ransomware payment. Could be in Bitcoin. So insurance companies usually pay for that ransomware. There's definitely a breach report or a forensic report required. That's paid for. Any kind of legal and regulatory fees, that's paid for. And any kind of business interruption insurance. So again, you mentioned, David, earlier, the cost of this business, whatever that cost, the number is between the insurance company and the family office, that would be covered by cyber insurance and liability insurance. So I just think that most important, we need to figure out how to get that 10% into 100% of cybersecurity insurance.
Okay.
It also could be a combination where, are they insurable, right? We mentioned some of the cyber awareness training, EDR, MFA. These are all questions that any cyber insurance company is going to ask. They're going to provide a questionnaire, some form of like a DDQ. It's going to, populate this information. Are you doing these things? Provide us proof that you're doing these things. So we answer these things a lot for our customers, and that's when conversations come in, and that can increase premiums or make you uninsurable depending on how many no's you have on that.
Okay. There was a follow-up to this, which is it seems like a lot of cyber policies offer pretty low limits. As a family office, the impact of an attack could go well into the 7 figures if the attacker understands how deep the pockets are that they're targeting. Is there a way to get more substantial coverage out of cyber insurance?
I think, and as Steve was saying, we look at all kinds of premium applications, and obviously we encourage that if they're asking for more money from the insurance companies, then the insurance company will demand more controls. So it's an offset, right? You pay a little bit more for controls, some advanced security monitoring, some SOC monitoring, or some SIM monitoring, and all of a sudden the insurance company will start to provide you more coverage because you're taking you're minimizing that risk, and they're able to help you with the costs. I just wanted to point out a couple of other things that are paid for by cybersecurity insurance. The remediation and restoration, which is key. People don't really understand that, but restoration and remediation could be huge. An IR event, anytime of these larger companies come in to do an IR, an incident recovery, you have companies like, Mandiant, and I'm not trying to put any kind of emphasis on these large companies that come in to do any kind of incident response, but there are huge costs in paying those IR firms. Insurance companies will pay the IR firms. So you have also some insurance companies will look at the infrastructure and say, okay, what is it going to cost to proactively upgrade these services? And it might be part of that insurance policy as well. So we see a lot of value with insurance companies and providing cybersecurity insurance as long as it's the right insurance provider and the right partner.
Okay. This is a question from the governance perspective of for family businesses or family offices that have a high reliance on technology. Do you recommend having an independent director either for the business or the office who has, cyber chops, who's, CIO, CISO, or CTO on the board or as part of the governance structure?
So what we see based upon the size of the family office, if it's 20 or more people, there are definitely a lot more people involved with due diligence and compliance officers. When you see an office with 6 to 8 people, basically the CFO or the COO operate on multi-hat type of approach. Right. But as they get bigger, there's certainly more people and a board involved. So our largest family office has I think over 100 people. They have plenty of departments, plenty of compliance, plenty of general counsel, and we're working with all those different types of groups to make sure they're protected. Okay.
And I think you addressed this a little bit, but this question is, what does a service level agreement look like with an MSSP? Is it a per seat basis, duration, et cetera? You mentioned per seat.
Yeah, typically we do a per seat basis, and we do contracts of 1 to 3 years, preferably 3 years. But we could be flexible based upon the client, based upon their time in the market. But again, we'd love to get opportunities with anybody who's interested. Obviously, we'll leave. You're going to provide our number hopefully somewhere. Yep. And they can give us a call and we can discuss how to put their business in perspective and figure out what the price should be.
Okay. Well, let's back that out one then and just say, okay, how can family offices evaluate and family businesses evaluate whether to outsource or co-manage their security? What's that evaluation process look like from your perspective?
I'll take that, Steve. So we work with a lot of accounting firms and banks and third parties that do risk assessments. Typically, we encourage working with a third party to do a risk assessment. Based upon that outcome of that risk assessment, they may need a company like ours to come in and remediate. So risk assessment will put together a list of all the areas of concern, gaps and controls, where their weaknesses are, where their threats are. They'll come back to firms like us to button those holes up, and then obviously we encourage them to sign up with us for a multi-year contract to making sure that continues to be to continue strengthening their posture. And obviously, they'll continue to provide, that third party will continue to provide risk assessments throughout the contract, and they'll see over time those risks are being minimized.
Okay. Excellent. And there was a follow-up comment on the idea of having an independent board member with cyber chops. This is, instead of having someone on the board, it can make sense to recruit a cybersecurity advisory council that meets a couple of times a year. It's not a fiduciary board, so the compensation doesn't need to be as high, but you still get the ability to get some expertise from outsiders looking at your systems, which I think is a pretty good idea. So, as kind of a final question, unless other audience questions come in, what are some signs that your family office infrastructure, your family business cyber infrastructure, is creating unnecessary risk? Do you have any kind of like warning signals?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we've been hopping on the cyber awareness training, but ultimately that falls down to is like, email posture and email integrity. If there's a lot of messages getting through, if you're getting SMS messages from someone in the organization asking you to buy gift cards, it's emails related to holidays and having you click on it. That's a sign that something's misconfigured, right? Do those things happen from time to time? Yes, but if you're seeing them at a high frequency and staff's reporting it, then something's wrong, right? From a setup perspective, and needs to be checked. The other thing would be just kind of overall. We offer a service where we call it, it's dark web analysis, essentially, right? Where we have all of us, we use our email accounts to log into all different services. You may lose your company email address to go in and order lunch or something like that. And so when these third-party services have a breach, information is shared. It could be just PII information, your name, your email address, but it could also include passwords. Those passwords, I mean, it's all about reverse engineering at this point. So those passwords, they'll look up a company's email domain, find out that they're with Microsoft, start to do some targeted email phishing, try to log in with the same username and password, things of that nature. So that's also a sign of like when you're starting to see communication or something that's almost makes a little bit too much sense. That means someone's got a little bit more information than you'd care to have them have. And there's some risk there.
I just want to add, David, if you don't mind, when Steve was talking about misconfigurations, it could be on MFA, it could be on Microsoft email. Again, you can't rely upon your cyber insurance company to cover anything such as misconfigurations. So that's where that risk assessment may come in handy. And that risk assessment will say, look, we need to review that tenant, the Microsoft tenant. And it's surprising to say how many people don't have conditional access or impossible travel or single sign-on. Things are, like I said earlier in the conversation, table stakes for good security hygiene. And things like a network refresh may never be covered by that cyber insurance. So it's always good to have a third party, like you said earlier, David, come in doing some sort of analysis, like a risk assessment. Based upon that outcome of that report, we can work with those type of companies and come up with a roadmap and a plan, and certainly be within budget.
Excellent. Okay. Well, I'd like to thank you both. We're going to give some 12 minutes back to everyone on this because I think you delivered a really spectacular webinar really quickly. So I thank you both, Warren and Steve. Do you have a key takeaway, a final comment for our audience?
I appreciate having us on. I certainly want to encourage people to look at that survey. Again, we'll make it available through David and his team. We spent a lot of time and effort collecting that data, and some of these things are alarming, but the bottom line is we need to all consider protecting our business with the right controls.
Yep, I agree. I thought the survey itself was well worth the time to go through. So with that, I thank you both very much. I would just note to all of you out there, our Transitions Fall Conference is coming up in 2 weeks. Yeah, there's still a few spots left. If you're a family business or a family office that wants to work on issues of family dynamics, cohesion, engagement, succession, and governance, do join us. But in the meantime, Warren, Steve, thank you so much for a terrific session. And I hope all of you enjoyed it. And we wish you a good rest of your week. So thank you.
Thanks, David.